Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Jay Sammy, and in this video I want to share with you 3 strategies that I've used in order to stick with something that I put my mind to do and not quit. Because in the past I had a long history of giving up too soon, giving up on things that I was trying to learn, whether that be a musical instrument or a new fitness plan, or even learning a new skill that was very important to me. I would start things and not finish it. So at a certain point in my life, I decided that I was going to make some changes and I was going to take one skill, one thing that I've been wanting to learn, and I will strategically attack it and figure out how to stick with it without quitting. Okay, so strategy number 1, make short-term commitments. That's the number 1 strategy that I employed. And for the specific example that I'll be using is I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu. I wanted to learn self-defense. I wanted to learn a martial arts, but I've always procrastinated and not followed through on it. And I decided that one year I wanted to focus on sticking with martial arts, because in the past I've done boxing classes, kickboxing classes, and then I get caught up with my normal life, and it's very easy to slip back into your old mental routines of doing the bare minimum and not following through. I sat down with myself and I said, you're going to get a gym membership for a jiu-jitsu gym and you're not going to quit. You're going to pay the money up front, and what you're going to do is you're going to commit to going. You're going to commit to sticking with this until you get a blue belt. So that was my short-term commitment, because most people, when they start, at least people similar to myself, our original goal would be to start jiu-jitsu and get a black belt, right? A black belt takes 10 years to get. So that's a very intimidating undertaking to do. So I broke it down and I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to jiu-jitsu, but I just need to get a blue belt. Now, a blue belt takes around a year to a year and a half, maybe 2, but it's very manageable. And because this is something that I wanted to actually learn and be a little bit proficient at, I needed to commit to a longer term, but it was still short term, if you understand what I mean. It wasn't a 10-year, it was a 1 to 2 year plan. As long as I could get a blue belt, then I can decide if I wanted to stick with it and continue pursuing jiu-jitsu or quit and get out of it. And one of the reasons why using a shorter term commitment is better is, 1, because it's much easier to do, right? I already mentioned that. It's easier for you to set a short term goal, because then you have a way out. Your brain is like, okay, you know what? I just need to do this for a short amount of time, and then I can regroup and see if I wanted to do it. And the other reason why is it also sets you up for success if you decide to continue pursuing it, because usually the first year, especially in jiu-jitsu, you don't really learn a whole lot where it becomes fun. Like, you're still learning the rules of the game. You're not actually playing the game. And it doesn't actually start becoming fun until you know some moves and you can start playing the game with your opponents, right? But if you can stick it out and get to a blue belt, now it becomes a lot more fun. It becomes more enjoyable. That's what I found anyways. It just became a lot more fun because I had more tools. I stuck with it. I learned the tools so that by the time you get a blue belt, it's already fun. So it's much easier for you to start making progress up, because that first bit you're kind of like a plateau, you're not, right? And if you can make a short-term commitment to get to the break-even point, anything past there is just gravy, because now you're going to start skyrocketing up. So the short-term commitment gets you to the break-even point, and then if you can decide if you want to stick with it, by that point you would have passed the break-even point, and now it'll be much easier for you to commit long-term, because you can see the benefits. The second thing that I did in order to stick with my goal of getting a blue belt and sticking with my jiu-jitsu is immerse yourself. Immerse yourself in the culture of jiu-jitsu. And what does that mean? That means I read a lot of books on jiu-jitsu, the history of jiu-jitsu, where did it come from, who invented it, who took it to the next level. I learned about its origins in Japan. I learned about Maeda. I think it was Maeda. He went to Brazil and he taught the Gracies, and then the Gracies developed it, and then the Gracies went to America and it blew up. And I became really immersed in everything jiu-jitsu. I learned about the top competitors in jiu-jitsu from the past. I learned the current people who's competing and followed them. I read a lot of books on it. I watched a documentary, which is an amazing documentary. It's called Choke, with Rickson Gracie, one of the best grapplers of all time. And I just became super into it. I started consuming everything I can with the time that I have to make it part of my identity. By doing this, it becomes part of my identity, so it's much less likely that I'm going to quit, because I'm investing so much time in it off the mats that it becomes part of me. It motivates me, it inspires me. Everything that I'm consuming is pushing towards me getting a blue belt. And that was one of the strategies that really helped me, because I learned so much about it that I'm so much more invested. When I go to the gym, it's backed by all of this extra knowledge that I have about jiu-jitsu. I might not have the skills to do it, but I have some knowledge about it. And I'll give you another example why this can be an effective strategy for you. Actually, cut out the last part I just said and instead go to this. I watch UFC, and now when I watch UFC, it has more meaning, because whenever it goes to the ground, I'm like, oh, I understand what's going on the ground. I can see that he's going for an armbar or a triangle. It becomes so much meaningful. The activities that you do, that you enjoy, when you see it through a lens of the skill that you're trying to learn, it makes you want to stick with that skill even more. Another example would be even dancing, right? Me and my wife, we love watching Dancing with the Stars. And because we have a little bit of background in dancing, we practice salsa and bachata and Brazilian zouk. And we've been around the dance scene. So now when we watch Dancing with the Stars, it has that much more meaning to us, because we feel a little bit more connected to it. So we enjoy watching things dance. So it's kind of like a back and forth, you know. You consume the content so that you can stick to the skill, And then by sticking to the skill, it allows you to enjoy the content more. If that makes any sense. It makes sense in my brain. And the third strategy that I implemented in order to stick with jiu-jitsu and not give up like I did in the past is solidifying my story. And there's a cool book called Starting with Why by Simon Sinek, I believe. And he talks about you want to start with your why whenever you do something. If you're starting a business or you're doing something, figure out why you're doing it, and that allows you to stick with it more, and it allows you to just be better at it, I guess. I can't remember exactly what the book was saying, but that was one of the strategies that I employed. And the reason for me was I wanted to learn self-defense. So that was the story that I told myself. I said, of all the skills that I could learn and physical activities that I can do, jiu-jitsu would be very, very practical. It would be jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling, and I chose jiu-jitsu for self-defense. But that was one of the stories, that this is a very practical skill to learn. So that's why I need to do it. The other reason that I told myself that I'm going to be taking on this activity is that I want to be able to share a skill with my children. When I have children, I want to be able to teach them something that I love and be skillful enough to show them, to share that with them. And I look back and I think, what if I was a boy in school and I knew jiu-jitsu and I knew self-defense? Would that give me the confidence to put my hand up in class and ask a question and not be afraid of looking like a fool and getting bullied, right? Those are some of the things, some of the stories that I told myself. So I said, if I could do this now and share it with my son, then he will have the confidence to put his hand up and not be intimidated by being bullied after class for answering or asking a stupid question. You understand? And I think that's powerful. To me, that story made sense. So even if it doesn't make sense to you, it makes sense to me. And that's what counts, is you got to tell yourself a story, why you're doing the hobby or the skill or whatever it is that you're trying to do and you're trying to stick with it. You have to come up with a very powerful story to tell yourself in order to stick with it. My powerful story was self-defense, protecting myself and my loved ones, and being able to give my children the gift of jiu-jitsu so that they can kick some ass and not be intimidated by getting bullied. So those are the three things that I employed, and now I'm almost a purple belt. I've stuck with it for almost 3.5 years now, and I don't see myself quitting it because I've passed that break-even point. It was very, very challenging for me the first 1.5 years. I wanted to quit a lot because you don't know what you're doing. As a brand new jiu-jitsu practitioner, you have very little skill. So the game sucks. You're basically there to get beat up by the other people that have been training for a year, 1.5 years. When you go to a jiu-jitsu gym for that first year, you're going to be a rag doll. They're going to beat you up. And it wasn't fun for me because I am competitive. I am pretty athletic and strong, and I think of myself as, a strong, tough person. So going every day, every time I went, I got my butt kicked. It did not feel good. As an adult, it's really hard to make friends. That was another challenge that I had to overcome. You go to a jiu-jitsu gym and it seems like everyone is already friendly to each other and you're the outsider and you have to build new relationships. I've been training for over 3 years now and I'm finally starting to make friends with jiu-jitsu. It's just hard. I'm nice to everyone. Everyone's nice to you, but in 3 years we've hung out once and that was recently. So it was challenging, I have to to drive to jiu-jitsu. I moved location, so instead of a 5-minute drive, it's now a 25-minute drive, and I have to stick with that. I have to have those three strategies: committing short term, immersing yourself, and solidifying your story. If I didn't do those three things, I don't think I would have stuck with jiu-jitsu. I think I would have quit a long time ago. Now I want to talk about a couple bonuses that I've partially implemented, but I know that it's very powerful and would help you to stick with it. And the first thing is you got to come up with a contingency plan. I didn't employ this strategy, and it took away from my goals a lot. But whenever I do something new, I try to I try to come up with some contingency for any scenarios if I get detracted from my goal. And that basically means, what happens if you get sick, right? If you decided to go to a boxing gym or a jiu-jitsu gym and commit for until you get your blue belt, what happens if you roll your ankle and you can't go anymore? What do you do? What happens if you get really sick? What happens if you have to travel and go see a family member far away? There's so many problems that could happen, and it's important that you come up with a strategy for what if. What if this happens? Do you quit it, or do you put it on pause? Do you train in a different way? So for example, if I'm doing jiu-jitsu and I get sick and I can't go to the gym for a month, let's say, do I study video? Do I study online courses? What is my plan? You got to have a plan. You got to have a backup plan for when things go south. And the second bonus tip that I'm trying to employ right now is to find yourself an accountability partner. Find yourself a coach or an accountability partner. A coach will be expensive. An accountability partner is going to be a little bit cheaper. But I recently read in a book that you're 7 times more likely to accomplish your short-term goals if you have an accountability partner. Not a coach, just somebody that you report to. And that's all you got to do. 15 minutes per week, you report on what it is that you've done towards that goal. And the mere act of doing that alone will help you to achieve your short-term goals. And I think one of the principles why this is so effective is because of a study that they did in the 1920s, 1930s, I believe. And it's called the Hawthorne effect, where they did studies on these factories, right? And the studies was to determine why some factories were more productive than others. So they would show up and they would say, hey, keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to monitor it just so that we can see what you guys are doing differently, so that we can improve production later. And what they found was not that some factories were more or less productive than others because of the tasks that they were doing. What the main find that they found was that whenever you observe someone, whenever they showed up on the factory, without changing any of the processes or the systems that were already in place, just the mere fact of observing the people, production increased dramatically. So just by observing people, you improve your production. You change the outcome by observing it. And I think that's what's happening with an accountability partner. And it might also be happening with a coach. I just came to that realization. A coach is not necessarily someone who is going to give you these profound insights and advice on how to change your life or your business. They can do that, but on the most basic level, what a coach could do for you is observe your production and increase it just by observing it. Even a bad coach can do that for you. And if you get a really good coach that can also advise you on how to make incremental improvements, that might be a bonus. So that's all I got for today. I hope you guys can start some new skills as an adult and attack it, not quit, follow through. And that's all I got for today. Peace.